The year was 2147, and humanity had taken its first bold steps into the stars. For decades, Earth's resources had been dwindling. Forests were cut down, oceans were polluted, and the air grew heavier with every passing year. The planet could no longer support its growing population. Governments around the world came together in an unprecedented show of unity to create Project Horizon, a massive effort to find new worlds where humans could live and thrive. It was a dream born out of desperation, but it was also a chance for humanity to start over. At the heart of Project Horizon was Commander Ryan Carter, a man known for his calm and steady leadership. He wasn't the kind of person who shouted orders or demanded attention. Instead, he led by example, earning the respect of everyone who worked with him. Ryan had spent most of his life in space, exploring distant corners of the solar system, long before humanity dared to venture beyond it. Now, at the age of 42, he found himself leading the most important mission of his career aboard the Odyssey. A state-of-the-art exploration vessel designed for deep space travel, the Odyssey was unlike anything Earth had ever built. Its sleek silver hull gleamed under the light of distant stars, and its advanced engines allowed it to travel faster than any ship before it. Inside, the crew lived and worked in a carefully controlled environment, shielded from the harshness of space. There were 12 members on board, each chosen for their unique skills. Among them was Lieutenant Daniel Harper, a skilled pilot with a fiery temper. Dr. Lavrov Bennett, a biologist eager to study alien ecosystems. And engineer Jake Miller, whose knack for fixing things had saved missions more times than anyone could count. Their mission was simple yet daunting: find habitable planets and establish contact with any intelligent life they encountered. The hope was that humanity could form alliances with other species, paving the way for peaceful expansion. But as the Odyssey approached its destination, a star system located near the edge of explored space, Ryan couldn't shake the feeling that this mission would be different. Something about the unknown always made him uneasy. Even though he'd faced countless dangers in his career, when the Odyssey entered the star system, the crew was greeted by a sight that left them speechless. Orbiting a massive gas giant was a structure so large it defied imagination. It looked like a ring, perfectly circular and shimmering with an iridescent glow. The surface seemed alive, pulsating with energy that radiated outward in rhythmic waves. No one had ever seen anything like it. Was it natural? Artificial? Or something else entirely? "Commander, you need to see this," said Jake, his voice trembling with excitement as he monitored the ship's sensors. "Whatever this thing is, it's generating enough power to light up half the galaxy." Ryan nodded, his eyes fixed on the view screen. "All right, team, let's stay focused. We don't know what we're dealing with here. Lavra, run a full scan. I want to know if there's any sign of biological activity. Jake, keep an eye on those energy readings. Daniel, prepare the probes, we're going in." As the crew sprang into action, a sense of awe mixed with unease settled over the ship. They launched several small drones to investigate the mysterious structure. The probes moved cautiously, transmitting data back to the Odyssey. At first, everything seemed quiet, almost serene. But then, without warning, the ring began to change. The pulsating lights grew brighter, shifting through colors too vivid to describe. A low hum filled the air inside the ship, resonating deep within their chests, and then they appeared, the Valens. They weren't like anything the crew had imagined. The beings emerged from the ring, glowing with an inner light that made them look almost ethereal. Their forms shifted constantly, as if they were made of liquid energy rather than solid matter. They didn't speak in words but communicated through patterns of color and sound, creating intricate displays that danced across the void of space. It was beautiful, mesmerizing, and utterly alien. Ryan ordered the crew to remain calm. "We're making contact," he said firmly. "Lavra, can you make sense of their signals?" Dr. Bennett studied the data pouring in from the probes. Her brow furrowed as she tried to decode the complex patterns. "It's communication," she said finally. "But it's not like anything we've ever encountered. It's like they're speaking in emotions, or maybe even thoughts." For hours, the crew attempted to communicate with the Valens. They sent messages in every format they could think of: text, images, mathematical equations, all in the hope of establishing some kind of dialogue. Slowly, painfully, progress was made. The Valens responded, their colorful displays becoming more structured, almost deliberate. Through trial and error, the crew learned that the Valens were intelligent, curious, and cautious. But there was one message they kept repeating over and over again: leave. It's not aggression, Lavra explained during a tense meeting in the ship's conference room. From what I can tell, they're trying to protect something. Maybe their home. World, maybe the entire system. They don't want us here. Daniel slammed his fist on the table. That's ridiculous. We came all this way looking for help and they just tell us to leave? What gives them the right? Maybe they've had bad experiences with other species, Jake suggested quietly. Or maybe they think we're a threat. Ryan rubbed his temples, feeling the weight of the situation pressing down on him. We can't force them to trust us. All we can do is try to show them we mean no harm. Back on Earth, news of the encounter spread quickly. People were fascinated by the idea of alien life, but frustration grew when reports confirmed that the Valens were refusing to cooperate. Dr. Emily Dawson, one of the lead scientists overseeing Project Horizon, found herself caught in the middle of a brewing storm. She had dedicated her life to studying the possibilities of extraterrestrial life, and now that humanity had finally made contact, she saw an opportunity for cooperation, not conflict. Emily pleaded with the United Nations Space Council to give diplomacy a chance. We have to prove to them that we're worth trusting, she argued during a heated session. If we rush into this, we risk destroying any chance of peaceful coexistence. But not everyone shared her optimism. General Harold Blake, a grizzled veteran with a reputation for being ruthless, saw the Valens as nothing more than an obstacle. To him, humanity's survival depended on securing new resources, no matter the cost. He dismissed Emily's calls for patience, arguing that time was a luxury Earth couldn't afford, unbeknownst to the public. Blake had already begun working on a secret project. Dubbed Project ZEUS, it involved the development of a fleet of heavily armed ships designed to overpower any resistance humanity might face in space. At the heart of the project was the ZEUS cannon, a weapon capable of unleashing devastating beams of plasma powerful enough to destroy entire moons. Blake believed that showing strength, not weakness, was the only way to ensure humanity's future. As tensions mounted, Ryan and his crew continued their efforts to build trust with the Valens. They shared images of Earth, showing the beauty of its landscapes and the diversity of its people. They transmitted messages of peace, hoping to convey their intentions clearly, but the Valens remained firm. Their message never changed: leave. Days turned into weeks, and the strain began to show. Supplies on the Odyssey were running low, and morale among the crew was faltering. Even Ryan, who had always been a pillar of strength, started to doubt whether they could succeed. He often found himself staring out at the glowing ring, wondering if they had misjudged the Valens or if the aliens had misjudged them. One evening, as the ship drifted silently in orbit, Ryan joined Lavra in the observation deck. The scientist sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by holographic displays of the Valen communication patterns. She looked up as he entered, offering a weak smile. "They're not evil, you know," she said softly. "I think they're scared, just like us." Ryan nodded, sitting down beside her. "Scared of what we might do, or scared of what they might lose? Maybe both," Lavra replied. "Either way, we can't give up. If we walk away now, we'll never know what could have been." Her words stayed with Ryan long after they parted ways. He knew she was right. Giving up wasn't an option, not when so much was at stake. Humanity's future depended on finding a way to bridge the gap between two vastly different species. And though the path ahead was uncertain, Ryan vowed to keep trying for the sake of everyone on Earth, and perhaps for the Valens too. Little did he know, the real challenge was only just beginning. Weeks turned into months, and the situation between humanity and the Valens remained tense. The crew of the Odyssey continued their attempts to communicate, but progress was painfully slow. Every message sent seemed to be met with the same response: leave. The Valens' refusal to allow humans access to their territory frustrated everyone involved. From the crew aboard the ship to the leaders back on Earth, Commander Ryan Carter tried to stay optimistic, but even he struggled to keep his patience. He knew the stakes were high. Back on Earth, billions of people were suffering as resources dwindled. Entire cities were running out of clean water, food shortages were becoming common, and the air quality in many regions was dangerously poor. Humanity's survival depended on finding new worlds to call home, and the Valens stood in the way of that goal. Dr. Emily Dawson, one of the lead scientists working on Project Horizon, had been following the mission closely from her office at the United Nations Space Council headquarters. She believed there was still hope for diplomacy. Emily spent countless hours analyzing the data transmitted by the Odyssey, searching for clues that might help bridge the gap between humans and the Valens. She was convinced that if they could find a way to understand each other better, peaceful coexistence was possible, but not everyone shared her belief. General Harold Blake, a man known for his no-nonsense approach and military mindset, saw the Valens as an obstacle that needed to be removed. To him, humanity's survival came first, and he wasn't willing to wait around for negotiations that might never succeed. Blake had already begun secretly funding Project ZEUS, a top-secret initiative aimed at creating weapons powerful enough to overpower any alien resistance. He believed that showing strength, not weakness, was the only way to secure humanity's future. Blake's views gained traction among world leaders as public opinion shifted. News outlets painted the Valens as tyrants who refused to share their resources with desperate humans. Headlines screamed about how the aliens were standing in the way of Earth's survival. People grew angry, demanding action from their governments. Protests erupted in major cities, with crowds chanting slogans like "Earth First" and "No More Waiting." Amidst the growing unrest, Emily fought tirelessly to advocate for peace. She gave interviews, wrote articles, and attended meetings, urging leaders to give diplomacy a chance. "We can't let fear drive us to violence," she argued during a televised address. "If we attack the Valens, we risk losing any chance of forming a relationship with them. And without allies in space, humanity will face even greater challenges in the future." Her words resonated with some, but many dismissed her as naive. Politicians accused her of being too soft, claiming that humanity couldn't afford to waste time trying to reason with beings who clearly didn't care about human suffering. Even within the Odyssey crew, opinions were divided. Lieutenant Daniel Harper, the ship's hot-headed pilot, was one of the most vocal critics of Emily's approach. He had grown increasingly frustrated with the lack of progress in negotiations. "How many times do we have to try before we admit it's not going to work?" he snapped during a heated discussion in the ship's mess hall. "They don't want to talk, they've made that clear. We're wasting our time here while people are dying back home." Jake Miller, the ship's engineer, shook his head. "Maybe they're scared, Daniel. Have you thought about that? They don't know us any better than we know them. What if they think we're the threat?" Daniel scoffed. "Then why don't they just say so instead of giving us the silent treatment? All this leave nonsense is getting us nowhere." Ryan listened to the argument quietly, letting his crew vent their frustrations. He understood where both sides were coming from. On one hand, Daniel was right, time was running out for Earth. On the other hand, Jake raised a valid point. The Valens' behavior suggested caution rather than malice. But what could they do to break the deadlock? Back on Earth, General Blake seized the opportunity to push Project ZEUS forward. With public support for aggressive action growing, he received the green light to accelerate development. Engineers worked around the clock to build the ZEUS cannon, a weapon capable of unleashing devastating beams of plasma. The cannon was designed to be mounted on a fleet of heavily armed ships, ready to deploy at a moment's notice. Blake personally oversaw the project, ensuring every detail was perfect. He handpicked Captain Linda Meyer, a disciplined officer with years of combat experience, to command the fleet. Linda was known for her loyalty and efficiency, qualities Blake valued above all else. When he briefed her on the mission, she didn't hesitate to accept. "This isn't just about winning a fight. Blake told her. "It's about securing humanity's place in the galaxy. If we show the Valens what we're capable of, they'll have no choice but to back down." Linda nodded, though a flicker of doubt crossed her mind. She had dedicated her life to serving Earth, but something about this mission felt wrong. Still, she pushed those thoughts aside. Orders were orders, and she would carry them out to the best of her ability. Meanwhile, tensions aboard the Odyssey reached a boiling point. One day, during another failed attempt to communicate with the Valens, Daniel lost his temper. As the crew gathered in the control room to review the latest data, he slammed his fist on the console. "This is pointless!" he shouted. "We're sitting ducks out here while Blake gets ready to blow them to pieces. Why are we even bothering?" Ryan stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. "Because we're not soldiers, Daniel. Our job is to find solutions, not start wars. If we walk away now, we're no better than the people who sent us here expecting results at any cost." Daniel glared at him. "And what happens when Blake shows up with his shiny new toys? Do you really think the Valens will just roll over and play nice? We're kidding ourselves if we think diplomacy is going to work." The room fell silent. Everyone knew Daniel had a point. Rumors of Project ZEUS had reached the crew, and the weight of the situation hung heavy in the air. They were caught between two extremes, the hope for peace and the inevitability of conflict. Lavra Bennett, the biologist, spoke up softly. "Maybe there's another way. We've been focusing so much on communicating with the Valens that we haven't stopped to consider what they might value. What if we offered them something in return? A trade, or maybe a joint project that benefits both sides?" Ryan considered her suggestion. It was risky, but it was worth a try. "All right," he said finally. "Let's put together a proposal. Lavra, work with Jake to come up with ideas. Daniel, I need you to focus on keeping the ship ready for anything. We don't know how the Valens will respond, and we need to be prepared." Over the next few days, the crew threw themselves into the task. Lavra and Jake brainstormed potential offerings, ranging from advanced technology to environmental restoration techniques. They compiled their ideas into a detailed presentation, which Ryan intended to transmit to the Valens. It was a long shot, but it was the best chance they had left. As the crew prepared their message, General Blake finalized plans for Project ZEUS. The first wave of ships was nearly complete, equipped with cutting-edge weapons and defenses. He scheduled a launch date, confident that humanity's show of force would bring the Valens to their knees. Unbeknownst to Blake, however, the Valens were watching. Their glowing forms shimmered with intensity as they monitored human activity. Through their intricate displays of color and sound, they communicated warnings to each other. The humans were preparing for war, and the Valens knew they couldn't afford to underestimate their opponents. One evening, as Ryan reviewed the final version of the proposal, he found himself staring out at the glowing ring once again. The Valens' presence was both mesmerizing and intimidating, a constant reminder of how much was at stake. He wondered if they truly understood the desperation driving humanity, or if they simply saw humans as invaders intent on taking what didn't belong to them. "Do you think they'll listen?" Lavra asked, joining him in the observation deck. Ryan sighed. "I don't know, but we have to try. If we don't, then everything we've done up to this point has been for nothing." Lavra nodded, her expression thoughtful. Sometimes I wonder if we're asking the wrong questions. Maybe it's not about convincing them to let us stay, it's about proving we deserve to be here." Her words stayed with Ryan as he prepared to send the message. He hoped the Valens would see the sincerity behind it, but deep down, he feared it might already be too late. The proposal was sent, and the crew of the Odyssey waited anxiously for a response. Days passed with no sign of acknowledgement from the Valens. The glowing ring remained eerily silent, its pulsating lights steady and unchanging. Tension aboard. The ship grew thicker with each passing hour. Commander Ryan Carter tried to keep morale high, but even he couldn't ignore the sinking feeling in his gut. What if their message had fallen on deaf ears? What if the Valens saw humanity's attempts at diplomacy as nothing more than a delay tactic? Back on Earth, the situation was deteriorating rapidly. Public frustration with the lack of progress boiled over into outright anger. News outlets reported rumors about General Harold Blake's secret project, fueling speculation that humanity was preparing for war. Protests erupted outside government buildings, with some demanding immediate action against the Valens and others pleading for peace. The United Nations Space Council held emergency meetings, but divisions among its members made it impossible to reach a consensus. Dr. Emily Dawson continued her fight for diplomacy, but her voice was drowned out by louder, more aggressive voices. Politicians dismissed her arguments, claiming that time was a luxury Earth could no longer afford. Even some of her colleagues began to doubt whether peaceful coexistence was possible. "We've tried everything," one council member said during a heated debate. "The Valens aren't interested in working with us. It's time to take what we need." Emily refused to give up. She knew that attacking the Valens would only escalate the conflict, potentially leading to a war humanity couldn't win. But as she watched world leaders rally behind General Blake's plan, she realized she was running out of allies. Her only hope was the crew of the Odyssey. If anyone could find a way to bridge the gap between humans and the Valens, it was them. Meanwhile, aboard the Odyssey, Lieutenant Daniel Harper grew increasingly restless. He paced the corridors of the ship, muttering under his breath about wasted opportunities and missed chances. "They're not going to respond," he snapped during another meeting in the control room. "We've been sitting here for months, and all they've done is tell us to leave. They don't care about us. They never did." Ryan shot him a sharp look. "That's not true, Daniel. We don't know what's going on inside that ring. Maybe they're debating our proposal right now. Or maybe they're trying to figure out how to respond without escalating things further." Daniel rolled his eyes. "Yeah, sure. Let's just sit here and wait for them to decide whether we live or die. Sounds like a great plan." Jake Miller, the engineer, stepped in before the argument could escalate. "Look, fighting among ourselves isn't going to help. We need to stay focused. If we lose hope now, then everything we've worked for falls apart." Lavra Bennett nodded in agreement. "Jake's right. We owe it to everyone back home to keep trying. If we give up, we're proving the Valens right that humans are reckless and dangerous." Her words struck a chord with Ryan. He knew the crew was tired, frustrated, and scared, but giving up wasn't an option. Humanity's survival depended on finding a solution, and they were the ones tasked with making it happen. "All right," he said firmly, "let's double down on our efforts. Lavra, work with Jake to refine the proposal. See if there's anything else we can offer. Daniel, I need you to run simulations, figure out what our options are if the Valens reject us outright." The crew scattered to their tasks, determination replacing despair. For the next several days, they poured their energy into improving the proposal. Lavra suggested offering advanced medical technology, hoping the Valens might value knowledge over material goods. Jake proposed sharing Earth's history, showing both the mistakes humanity had made and the lessons learned from them. Together, they crafted a new message, one they hoped would resonate with the aliens, but as they prepared to send the updated proposal, disaster struck. Without warning, the Valens launched an attack on Earth's orbital stations. Dozens of glowing ships emerged from the ring, moving with precision and speed. Their weapons fired beams of light that sliced through metal and circuitry, crippling satellites and communication arrays. Panic spread across the planet as people realized the Valens weren't just refusing to cooperate, they were actively preventing humanity from expanding into space. Miraculously, no lives were lost. The Valens targeted infrastructure rather than populated areas, sending a clear message: leave or face consequences. Back on Earth, fear turned to outrage. World leaders convened an emergency summit where General Blake seized the opportunity to push for immediate deployment of Project ZEUS. "This is exactly why we can't trust them," he declared, slamming his fist on the table. "They attacked us without provocation. Diplomacy has failed. It's time to show them we mean business." Despite Emily's protests, the Council voted overwhelmingly in favor of launching Project ZEUS. Within hours, the first wave of ships departed Earth's atmosphere, heading straight for the star system where the Odyssey was stationed. Captain Linda Meyer led the fleet, her expression grim as she reviewed the mission parameters. She didn't like the idea of starting a war, but orders were orders, and she intended to carry them out to the best of her ability. Aboard the Odyssey, the crew received news of the attack and the impending arrival of the ZEUS fleet. Shock and disbelief rippled through the team. "They're really doing it," Daniel muttered, staring at the view screen. "Blake's dragging us into a war we can't win." Ryan clenched his fists, struggling to process the situation. He had always believed in finding a peaceful solution, but now it seemed that path had been closed off. The Valen's attack had pushed humanity to the brink, and the arrival of the ZEUS fleet threatened to tip the scales into chaos. "We can't let this happen," Ryan said finally, his voice firm despite the turmoil inside him. "If we don't intervene, this entire system will turn into a battlefield." Lavra looked at him, wide-eyed. "What do you mean? How can we stop it?" "I don't know yet," Ryan admitted. "But we have to try. If we can broker a ceasefire before the ZEUS fleet arrives, maybe we can prevent a full-scale war." Daniel shook his head. "You're dreaming, Ryan. The Valens won't listen to us, and Blake's not going to call off his dogs just because we ask nicely. Then we'll make them listen," Ryan replied. "We're the only ones who can bridge the gap between these two sides. If we fail, billions of lives are at stake." The crew exchanged uneasy glances but ultimately agreed to follow Ryan's lead. They didn't have much time. The ZEUS fleet was already halfway to the star system. Working quickly, they devised a risky plan. Using the Odyssey's experimental gravity manipulator, they would create a temporary stasis field around the battlefield, freezing both sides in place long enough to negotiate a ceasefire. It was a desperate gamble, but it was the only chance they had. As the ZEUS fleet approached, the Valens detected their presence and mobilized their defenses. Glowing barriers of energy surrounded the ring, forming an impenetrable shield. When the first ZEUS cannon fired, obliterating one of the smaller alien constructs, the Valens retaliated with overwhelming force. Beams of light crisscrossed the void, destroying dozens of human ships in moments. Chaos reigned as explosions lit up the darkness, debris floating aimlessly in the aftermath. Amidst the devastation, the Odyssey moved into position. Ryan gave the order to activate the gravity manipulator, and the ship shuddered as the device powered up. A ripple of energy spread outward, enveloping the battlefield in a shimmering dome. Time slowed to a crawl, and then stopped altogether. Ships hung motionless in space, their weapons frozen mid-fire. The hum of engines faded, replaced by an eerie silence. Inside the Odyssey, the crew held their breath. Had it worked? Ryan checked the sensors, confirming that the stasis field was holding. "All right," he said, turning to his team. "Now comes the hard part. Let's get to work." Using the ship's communication systems, Ryan transmitted a message to both sides. "This is Commander Ryan Carter of the Odyssey. We have neutralized the battlefield to prevent further loss of life. We urge both parties to stand down and negotiate a peaceful resolution. Humanity and the Valens must find a way to coexist or risk mutual destruction." For a moment, there was no response. Then slowly the Valens' glowing forms appeared outside the ship, their colors shifting in patterns that suggested curiosity and perhaps even approval. At the same time, Captain Linda Meyer's voice crackled over the radio. "Commander Carter, what the hell are you doing? Stand down immediately." Ryan ignored her, focusing instead on maintaining the fragile truce. "Captain Meyer, I understand your orders, but continuing this fight will only lead to disaster. Please, trust me. Give us a chance to resolve this peacefully." There was a long pause before Linda replied. "Fine, but if this goes south, it's on your head." With both sides temporarily immobilized, Ryan and his crew arranged a meeting aboard the Odyssey. Representatives from the Valens floated silently in the observation deck, their forms shimmering with an otherworldly glow. Across from them sat Captain Meyer and several members of the ZEUS fleet, their expressions wary but willing to listen. Ryan opened the discussion, speaking slowly and clearly. "We're here because the survival of both our species depends on finding a solution. Attacking each other will only lead to destruction. Is there a way we can share this system? Can we work together? The fragile agreement between humanity and the Valens was a small but significant step toward peace. However, it didn't erase the scars left by the recent conflict. The crew of the Odyssey knew that maintaining trust would require constant effort. Both sides had suffered losses, ships destroyed, lives disrupted, and the wounds were still fresh. Commander Ryan Carter understood that one misstep could undo everything they had worked so hard to achieve. Back on Earth, news of the ceasefire spread quickly, sparking mixed reactions. Some celebrated the breakthrough as a sign of hope, while others condemned it as a betrayal of humanity's interests. General Harold Blake was among the loudest critics. He argued that agreeing to the Valens' terms was a mistake, claiming it put Earth at a disadvantage. "We've surrendered our advantage," he raged during a closed-door meeting with military officials. "If we had pushed harder, we could have taken what we needed." Blake refused to accept defeat. Though Project ZEUS had been officially dismantled, he quietly ordered his team to keep developing weapons in secret. He believed that humanity's survival depended on having the upper hand, even if it meant breaking the agreement. His actions went unnoticed for now, but they planted seeds of doubt about Earth's commitment to peace. Meanwhile, Captain Linda Meyer returned to Earth with her fleet, hailed as a hero by some and criticized by others. She struggled with conflicting emotions. On one hand, she felt pride in averting a full-scale war. On the other hand, she couldn't shake the feeling that humanity had compromised too much. During debriefings with the United Nations Space Council, she voiced her concerns. "The Valens are powerful," she warned. "If they decide to turn against us, we won't stand a chance unless we're prepared." Dr. Emily Dawson, however, saw things differently. She viewed the agreement as a triumph of diplomacy over aggression. For weeks, she worked tirelessly to promote cooperation between humans and the Valens. She organized workshops, wrote articles, and gave speeches emphasizing the importance of mutual understanding. "This is our chance to prove that we're capable of change," she told a crowd during a global broadcast. "By working together, we can create a future where everyone benefits, not just humans." Despite her optimism, Emily faced fierce opposition. Politicians accused her of being naive, and public opinion remained divided. Many people questioned whether the Valens could truly be trusted. Rumors circulated that the aliens were using the agreement as a way to buy time, planning to strike again when humanity least expected it. These fears only deepened the divide between those who supported peace and those who favored a more aggressive approach aboard the Odyssey. Tensions simmered beneath the surface. Lieutenant Daniel Harper continued to struggle with his frustration. He resented the fact that humanity had backed down, believing it showed weakness. "We should have finished what we started," he muttered during a private conversation with Jake Miller. "Instead, we're letting them call all the shots." Jake sighed, shaking his head. "It's not about winning or losing, Daniel. It's about survival. If we'd kept fighting, we might not be here right now. Sometimes compromise is the only way forward." Daniel clenched his fists but said nothing. Deep down, he knew Jake was right, but accepting it was another matter entirely. He wasn't alone in his feelings. Many members of the crew shared his doubts. They had risked their lives to bring both sides to the table, yet the outcome left them uneasy. Had they done enough, or had they simply delayed the inevitable? Ryan noticed the growing unease among his team. He called a meeting in the ship's conference room, determined to address their concerns. "I know this hasn't been easy," began his voice calm but firm. "We've sacrificed a lot to get here, and I understand why some of you feel frustrated. But remember why we're doing this. We're not just representing ourselves, we're representing everyone back home. Every decision we make affects billions of lives." Lavra Bennett nodded in agreement. "Ryan's right. This isn't just about us, it's about building a foundation for the future. Yes, there will be challenges, and yes, there will be setbacks. But if we give up now, we'll lose everything we fought for." Her words resonated with the crew, easing some of their doubts. Still, the road ahead was uncertain. The agreement with the Valens required strict adherence to environmental regulations. which meant limiting colonization efforts to specific areas. Engineers and scientists back on Earth scrambled to adapt their plans, designing sustainable habitats that wouldn't harm the delicate ecosystems of the designated planets. It was a daunting task, but also an opportunity to rethink humanity's relationship with the environment. As Earth adjusted to the new reality, the Valens began testing humanity's resolve. Their glowing ships patrolled the edges of the agreed-upon territories, monitoring human activity closely. Any deviation from the rules resulted in swift warnings, conveyed through bursts of light and sound. At first, these encounters caused panic among human settlers who feared retaliation. Over time, though, they learned to interpret the signals. Realizing the Valens weren't trying to intimidate, they were enforcing the agreement. Despite these challenges, progress was made. Joint research initiatives brought humans and Valens together, fostering collaboration and mutual respect. Dr. LeVar Bennett played a key role in these efforts, sharing Earth's scientific advancements while learning from the Valens' unique technologies. Through trial and error, she discovered that the aliens communicated not just through patterns of color and sound, but also through subtle shifts in energy fields. By adapting their equipment, she managed to establish rudimentary two-way communication, bridging the gap between the two species. The breakthrough thrilled Ryan, who saw it as proof that coexistence was possible. "This is exactly what we need," he told the crew after reviewing the latest data. "If we can keep building on this, we'll have something truly special, a partnership based on trust and understanding." But not everyone shared his enthusiasm. General Blake viewed the developments with suspicion, convinced that the Valens were manipulating humanity for their own gain. He used his influence to sow doubt among world leaders, urging them to prepare for the worst. "Mark my words," he told a group of military advisors. "They're biding their time. When they see an opening, they'll strike." His paranoia reached a tipping point when reports surfaced of unusual activity near the edge of the star system. Glowing lights had been spotted moving erratically, seemingly unconnected to known Valen patrols. Blake seized on the information, claiming it was evidence of an impending attack. "We can't afford to wait around for them to make the first move," he argued. "We need to act now, before it's too late." To his surprise, many agreed with him. Public opinion shifted once again, fueled by fear-mongering headlines and inflammatory rhetoric. Calls for renewed aggression grew louder, putting pressure on the United Nations Space Council to reconsider its stance. Emily Dawson fought back, organizing rallies and protests to defend the agreement. She pleaded with world leaders to stay committed to peace, reminding them of the cost of war. "If we abandon this path now, we'll destroy any chance of forming alliances in the future," she warned during a heated council session. "Is that really what we want?" Her arguments fell on deaf ears. The Council voted to authorize limited military action, citing the need to protect Earth's interests. Though the decision stopped short of declaring outright war, it signaled a troubling shift in priorities. Trust, once fragile, began to erode. On the Odyssey, Ryan watched the unfolding events with growing concern. He knew that the agreement was hanging by a thread. If tensions escalated further, it might snap completely. Determined to prevent that from happening, he reached out to the Valens, hoping to reassure them of humanity's intentions. Using the newly established communication system, he transmitted a message explaining the situation on Earth. "Not everyone agrees with the agreement," he admitted, "but many of us are committed to making it work. Please give us more time." The Valens responded with a display of shifting colors, interpreted by Lavra as cautious approval. "They're saying they'll wait," she reported after analyzing the patterns, "but they're watching us closely. One wrong move and they'll act." Ryan nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settle heavily on his shoulders. "Then we better make sure there aren't any wrong moves." Over the next few weeks, the crew redoubled their efforts to maintain stability. They monitored human activities in the region, ensuring compliance with the agreement. They also worked to strengthen ties with the Valens, organizing joint missions and cultural exchanges. Slowly but surely, trust began to grow, fragile but real. Still, the shadow of General Blake loomed large. Unbeknownst to the Council, he had secretly reactivated parts of Project ZEUS, preparing for a potential second strike. His ultimate goal was clear: to demonstrate humanity's dominance, forcing the Valens into submission. He believed that only through strength could Earth secure its place in the galaxy. For now, his plans remained hidden, but Ryan couldn't shake the feeling that trouble was brewing. As he stood on the observation deck, gazing out at the glowing ring in the distance, he wondered how long the fragile peace would last. Humanity and the Valens had taken their first steps toward coexistence, but the journey was far from over. The fragile peace between humanity and the Valens was hanging by a thread, and Commander Ryan Carter knew it. Every day brought new challenges, testing the limits of trust on both sides. The crew of the Odyssey worked tirelessly to keep tensions from boiling over, but the pressure was relentless. Back on Earth, General Harold Blake's secret preparations for another strike continued unnoticed, casting a shadow over the fragile agreement. One evening, as the Odyssey orbited near the glowing ring, Ryan called his team together in the ship's conference room. "We're at a critical point," he said, his voice steady but filled with urgency. "If we don't find a way to strengthen this alliance, everything we've built could collapse." Lavra Bennett nodded, her expression serious. "The Valens are still hesitant. They've seen too many signs of aggression from us, not just recently, but throughout history. We need to show them that we're committed to change." Jake Miller leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. "But how? We've already done so much shared technology, started joint missions. What else can we do?" Ryan thought for a moment before answering. "We need to go deeper. Show them not just what we can offer, but who we are. Our hopes, our fears, our dreams. Maybe if they understand us better, they'll see that we're worth trusting." Daniel Harper crossed his arms, skepticism written all over his face. "And how exactly do you plan to do that?" "Send them a playlist of human music and call it a day?" Ryan ignored his sarcasm. "Actually, something like that might help. Not just music, but art, stories, even recordings of everyday life on Earth. Anything that shows we're more than just a species fighting for survival." Laura's eyes lit up. "That's brilliant. It's personal, relatable. If we share pieces of our culture, maybe they'll open up about theirs." The crew agreed to move forward with the idea. Over the next few days, they collected videos, images, and audio recordings from Earth. Some showed bustling cities and technological marvels, while others captured quiet moments: a child laughing, a sunset over an ocean, a musician playing a heartfelt melody. Together, these fragments painted a picture of humanity, flawed, resilient, and full of potential. When the package was ready, Ryan transmitted it to the Valens, accompanied by a message. "This is who we are," he said simply. "Not perfect, but trying to be better. We hope you'll share a piece of yourselves with us too." For several tense hours there was no response. Then, slowly, the glowing forms of the Valens appeared outside the ship. Their colors shifted in intricate patterns, conveying emotions that Lavra struggled to fully translate. But one thing was clear: they were moved. "They're saying, 'Thank you,'" Lavra reported, her voice trembling with excitement. "They want to respond." Moments later, the Odyssey's screens lit up with images sent by the Valens. There were scenes of their own world, shimmering landscapes bathed in light, and glimpses of their society, a harmonious blend of individuality and unity. The crew watched in awe, realizing for the first time that the Valens weren't just guardians of their territory. They were protectors of balance, striving to maintain peace across the galaxy. "This changes everything," Ryan whispered, his eyes fixed on the screen. "If we can keep building this connection, maybe we really can coexist." But as optimism grew aboard the Odyssey, trouble brewed back on Earth. General Blake had completed his preparations for Project ZEUS 2.0, a smaller but equally devastating fleet equipped with advanced weaponry. He believed that striking now, while the Valens were distracted by cultural exchanges, would give humanity the upper hand. Without informing the United Nations Space Council, he gave the order to deploy the fleet. Captain Linda Meyer received the directive with a heavy heart. She had hoped the ceasefire would hold, but orders were orders. Reluctantly, she led the fleet toward the star system, preparing for battle. When news of the approaching ships reached the Odyssey, panic spread among the crew. "They're going to ruin everything," Daniel shouted, pacing the control room. "All our hard work gone in seconds." Ryan clenched his fist, determination burning in his eyes. "Not if we stop them first." "Jake, get me a direct line to Linda. Lavra, send an emergency message to Earth, let them know what's happening. We can't let Blake start another war." Jake worked quickly, establishing communication with Linda's flagship. Her face appeared on the screen, lined with exhaustion. "Commander Carter, I know why you're calling, but I have my orders. And I'm telling you those orders are wrong," Ryan replied firmly. "If you attack now, you'll destroy. Any chance of peace? Is that really what you want?" Linda hesitated, torn between duty and conscience. "I don't want this fight any more than you do, but I can't disobey a direct order." "Then delay," Ryan urged. "Give us time to negotiate. Please, Linda, you're the only one who can stop this." After a long pause, Linda nodded. "All right. I'll hold position for now, but you'd better make this quick." With the fleet temporarily stalled, Ryan turned his attention to Earth. Dr. Emily Dawson received the urgent message and sprang into action. Using her influence, she hacked into global communication networks, broadcasting live footage of the cultural exchange with the Valens. She spoke passionately, appealing directly to the public. "This is what we stand to lose if we choose war over peace. Look at what we've achieved together. Do we really want to throw it all away?" Her words struck a chord. People around the world watched the broadcast, seeing for the first time the beauty of cooperation. Protests erupted, demanding an end to Blake's plans. Politicians who had supported military action began to waver, pressured by constituents, unwilling to risk another conflict. Meanwhile, Ryan contacted the Valens, explaining the situation. "Some among us still seek war," he admitted. "But many more want peace. Please, give us a chance to prove ourselves." The Valens responded with a cascade of colors interpreted by Lavra as understanding and forgiveness. "They're willing to wait," she told the crew. "But they're watching closely. One wrong move and they'll defend themselves." As events unfolded, General Blake found himself increasingly isolated. His unauthorized actions came to light, sparking outrage within the military and government. Facing mounting pressure, he was forced to stand down, and the fleet under Linda's command was recalled. The crisis had been averted, but barely in the aftermath. Humanity and the Valens took steps to solidify their partnership. Joint councils were formed, bringing representatives from both species together to oversee shared projects. Environmental regulations became stricter, ensuring that colonization efforts left minimal impact on alien ecosystems. Scientists and engineers collaborated on groundbreaking technologies, combining human ingenuity with Valen wisdom. Back on Earth, Emily Dawson continued her advocacy for peaceful coexistence. Though scars remained from the recent turmoil, hope began to flourish. People embraced the idea of working alongside the Valens, seeing it as a chance to redefine humanity's role in the galaxy. Art, music, and stories flowed freely between species, fostering mutual understanding and respect. Ryan returned home a hero, hailed for averting catastrophe. Yet he remained humble, crediting his crew and the Valens for their courage and perseverance. "This isn't my victory," he said during a press conference. "It belongs to everyone who chose peace over fear, cooperation over conflict." Even Daniel, once a vocal critic of diplomacy, found himself changed by the experience. Though he never fully forgave himself for doubting the process, he dedicated himself to protecting the fragile alliance. "We've been given a second chance," he told Jake one evening. "Let's make sure we don't waste it." As the Odyssey prepared for its next mission, Ryan stood on the observation deck, gazing out at the stars. He thought about how close humanity had come to destruction and how far they had come since. Together, they had proven that even in the vastness of space, understanding and unity could triumph over fear and division. The journey ahead would be long and challenging, but Ryan knew one thing for certain. Humanity and the Valens had taken their first steps toward a brighter future. And as long as they continued to walk that path together, anything was possible.